Hey, what's going on, gang? Nate on the Stone here. Welcome back to my channel. Last week we were talking about WAP, Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion's rap piece, which some people on the left were saying was far better than anything that some guy named Shakespeare had ever written.
Put this wet and gushy. Beat it up, baby, catch a charge. Extra large and extra hard. Put this cookie right in your face. Swipe your nose like a credit card. Hop on top, I wanna ride. I do a giggle, I'm kinda wild. Look at my mouth, look at my thighs. It's wet, it's wet, come take a dive.
Oh, yeah! The Bard ain't got nothing on that little slice of heaven. This video is a sequel of sorts. Last week we saw two very powerful pop cultural dynamos calling for the complete decoupling of sex from reproduction. This week we're looking at the practical applications of that mindset, as well as some of its results. Debra Spar is the Senior Associate Dean of Harvard's Business School Online, and she is a former president of Barnard College. And on August 12th, the New York Times published an op-ed by her entitled, "The Polyparent Households Are Coming." In the op-ed, Spar gushed about in vitro gametogenesis, IVG, a process which creates human sperm and human eggs outside of the human body and instead in a laboratory by coaxing human stem cells to become either sperm or eggs. Literally, the process allows people to create their own sperm and their own egg from a sliver of their own skin. And the reason why Spar was gushing about IVG is because this process will liberate sex from reproduction. She imagines a world where, quote, "Single women could also choose to employ it, IVG, creating eggs to match with sperm derived from friends or family members. Platonic friends might become parents together, sharing lives and families that are not linked to sex. Older couples could conceive and raise their own grandchildren." Spar goes further and says that IVG is liable to upend our basic idea of what even a family is, and that as IVG becomes more and more popular, more accessible, and more common, we, the common people, the plebes, will stop looking at it as a Frankenstein, Jurassic Park, Skynet, mad scientist experiment, but instead see it as completely normal. She ends her piece by saying, quote, "We worry about mucking with nature. We fret about designer babies or the possibility of some madman hatching Frankenstein in his backyard. Then we discover that it's just the nice couple next door using an increasingly common technology to create children they love, children who become far less scary as they move out of the world of scientific abstraction and into the realm of the real. Over a remarkably short period of time, we have grown accustomed to these nice parents in our neighborhood being a couple of men or women, or a single one of any sex. We will get used to them being a threesome, or foursome as well, and then we'll see the new normal as simply the real, and we'll forget that it was technology that changed this world." The complete uncoupling of sex from reproduction and the triumph of the fluid family leads in Spar's mind to the greatest benefit of IVG technology, the complete dismantling of the reproductive structure of heterosexuality, which coincidentally enough will change everything we know about sex, babies, and marriage. And if anyone thinks that this scenario is a bit too Isaac Asimov, Aldous Huxley, Spar reminds us that it actually has already happened. In 2015 to be precise. She reminds us that one of the primary reasons why the Supreme Court gutted the definition of marriage in its Obergefell case is because of the argument made that children in same-sex households needed their parents to get married so that they could reap the same benefits that the children in married opposite-sex households received. What a lot of people were ignorant of at the time, however, is that a lot of the children in these same-sex households were conceived through reproductive technology. In Spar's words, quote, "Urged by technology, therefore, we have already changed how we procreate and with whom. We have separated sex from reproduction and multiplied the various pairings that can together produce a child." So the unasked question is, why can't we do it again? Like I said at the beginning of the video, Spar's op-ed is the logical conclusion of Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion's mentality. If sex is just something that people do for whatever reason and reproduction has absolutely nothing to do with it, and if the technology exists that allows people to mass produce children, Why wouldn't the world Spar describes, a world where grandparents can now create and raise their own grandchildren, why wouldn't that world come into existence? Why shouldn't it come into existence? Well, wouldn't you know, there are several primordial reasons why it shouldn't come into existence. In the first place, it will destroy men and women. I mentioned in last week's video that sex is intrinsically related to reproduction, saying that if it wasn't, not only would sex not exist and we would reproduce like earthworms, but also mentioning that if sex and reproduction were completely disassociated, then we wouldn't even have the idea of safe sex. From this, it follows that we are men or women because of sex. If we didn't reproduce sexually, then there would be absolutely no reason why the human race is divided between men and women. I also talked briefly last week that there is more to sexual complementarity than just sex organs and certain parts fitting together. There's the psychological aspect to it as well. A man's psychology is directed towards a woman. And for her part, a woman's psychology is directed towards a man. This psychological sexual complementarity can only be fulfilled through eros, sexual desire that can only be fulfilled and satisfied by the other, by the beloved. But if Spar's world comes to pass fully, all of this will be gone. In Spar's world, Venus, sexual desire that is interested only in its own sedation, never mind with whom, will be on a completely equal footing with Eros. A pass in the night will be just the same as a lifelong monogamous relationship between a husband and a wife. And this will be so because sex will have been rendered completely meaningless because it will have been sundered from its telos, which is children. And that'll be a disaster because when that is completely normalized, then a large part of our soul will be starved to death because we will never be taught the necessary joy of Eros. Deep down, we all know that we need Eros as opposed to Venus. Sex itself, coincidentally enough, is designed to produce Eros. When you do the old
Devil's Tango,
your brain releases oxytocin, and oxytocin, according to the website Psych Central, quote, released into the brain of the female during sexual activity is important for forming a monogamous pair bond with her sexual partner. Vasopressin appears to have a similar effect in males. In people, plasma concentrations of oxytocin have been reported to be higher amongst people who claim to be falling in love. Oxytocin has a role in social behaviors in many species, and so it seems likely that it has similar roles in humans. Interestingly, when even casual or self-serving sexual activity ends, there is often a feeling of loss and pain, because the bonding that our bodies and our minds thought was going to happen between us and the other person because of all the sexual activity happening between the two of us failed to materialize. In a fascinating admission to Benoit Denizet-Louis, writing in the New York Times in 2004, a teenage girl named Melissa admitted to Louis on the day of her interview that she was feeling angry and betrayed because her friends with benefits had just broken up with her. And this actually made Melissa very confused because, like she said, there was no logical reason why she should feel angry, why she should have this feeling of pain over a friends with benefits. She said, quote, "The point of having a friends with benefits is that you won't get broken up with, you won't get hurt." In Spar's world, instead of being taught that sex is supposed to lead to monogamy and bonding because, you need those things to raise children in a family unit, again, reproduction, we will be taught that Venus is the ideal and not Eros. And even worse, we will be encouraged to shred ourselves into dozens of psychological little pieces over dozens of sexual partners. But maybe that's just a small price for liberation, am I right? But this brave new world isn't just going to hurt us as men and women, it's also going to hurt children. Most obviously, by turning them into commodities. Going back to the whole connection between reproduction, eros, and sex, children ideally are supposed to be the end result of love. If there's marital love, but no children, we know that something is missing. If you have a young married couple who are childless and continue to remain childless, nobody has to say anything, probably nobody will say anything today, But we all know instinctively that an important piece of the puzzle is missing. The incarnation of their love isn't anywhere to be found. IVG and Spar's dreams make children not the end result of love, but the end result of a check and a test tube. Rather than being the end result of a husband and a wife giving of each other completely to the other, children instead become products to be purchased. Now, ironically enough, in the 19th century, purchasing a human being was called slavery. In the 21st century, it's called liberation and autonomy. In a sense, though, IVG is even worse than slavery because instead of just buying a person like a plantation owner might do in 1840s New Orleans, IVG allows people to actually create their product according to their own specifications. A 19th century slave knew he was a slave, but at the same time knew that he was a human person created by God. This was actually the fundamental reason why he knew and understood that slavery, the institution, and his own personal enslavement was immoral. Look, for example, at the writings of Frederick Douglass. A baby created via the Frankenstein method of IVG won't just be bought and paid for by his keepers. He will also be carefully genetically assembled by the assortment of doctors and mad scientists hired by his keepers. It's a 1-2 assault on their humanity. And there's something else too. As of this recording, IVG has only been conducted successfully on mice. There have been no human test subjects. Which means that we have absolutely no idea what the physical and psychological effects of being created via IVG will actually have on human babies. You would think that if we lived in anything that even halfway resembled a sane world, this fact alone would give people like Spar a momentary pause and the understanding that we need to slow down and contemplate about all the results and ramifications of this process. But no, instead all we get is a big full of, they'll be fine, the kids will be absolutely fine. We've seen this scenario before in the 1960s when the marriage laws were liberalized to the point where irreconcilable differences was enough to break up a family. The lawyers, the social scientists, the psychologists, the pediatricians, all of them said that the kids were going to be absolutely fine. Kids were tough, kids were adaptable. Divorce wasn't going to hurt them, no siree. Fast forward 50 years, and we can clearly see all the harmful effects that divorce has had on children, to the point now where every school has counselors to help children work their way through their parents' divorce. Smart people would have learned from history, but when you're operating under a 1619 mentality that says that any part of history can be rewritten for any reason whatsoever, that option is really no longer on the table. It's safe to say, however, that the results of IVG will not be good. We already know that children who are born of surrogacy suffer the same thing that orphan children do, what's called the primal wound, i.e., the long-term and unwanted separation between a mother and her child, which leads to depression, abandonment and loss issues, and emotional complications all throughout life. It's safe to say that children created via IVG are going to suffer from the same wounds and probably a host of other psychological trauma as well. But you know, what are the lives of kids when we have to free ourselves from heteronormativity, right? And then there's society. A blind man can see that if anything can be a family, if any sort of arrangement can be a family, then the very idea and word of family is rendered absolutely meaningless. It becomes nothing more than a blank slate upon which anyone at any time, anywhere can put down his own thoughts, ideas, and opinions, his own proclivities as to what he thinks it is or wants it to be. And that's bad news because family, as we know from our friend Aristotle, is the cornerstone of civilization. The family is the little state where new members are forged through the fires of creation and where they learn through their bonded mother and father what it means to be a human person, what it means to be good, virtuous, just, honest, industrious, and also what it means to be a part of a civilization, of a particular society. It's also through the family that children learn how to interact with other people. By watching their bonded mother and father, they learn how the sexes are supposed to treat each other and interact. And by watching their parents' interactions with other adults, they begin to learn how they are supposed to treat other people in society. Abolish the family, and all of this goes down the drain. Now, by itself, that's terrifying enough. But now consider this. So many things that we take for granted in society exist because of the family. School districts, traffic laws, even common standards of decency, the ones that actually are still clinging to life anyway, exist largely because we recognize explicitly or implicitly that family is the cornerstone of civilization. If the family is abolished, forget about just turning on its head what we know about sex, babies, and reproduction. Everything of substance in society is going to change. And one major way that society is going to change will be the fact that we will no longer have any protection from the government. We will have no family bonds to which to pledge our loyalty. We'll have no local communities, which will act as a buffer between us and the state, because, local communities are made up of families. We will stand naked and alone on the hilltop, with absolutely no protection when the great eye swivels to concentrate specifically on us. And if you think that this has absolutely no implication for your own life, you're not going to get married, you're not going to start a family, so you don't have to worry about the abolition of the family, and you're just going to keep your head down and make your way through the storm, I've got some bad news for you. The state and the New World Order isn't going to let you do that. The state in this new scenario is going to be controlling every single aspect of your existence. How is it going to be doing that? By controlling the standards of society completely and utterly. Spar's piece says that the long-term result of IVG technology will be the erasing of the norm, connecting heterosexuality and reproduction, in favor of there being no norm at all. The sky is the limit when it comes to sex, which also means that the sky is the limit when it comes to relationships, family, sexual ethics, etc. But you see, here's the gag. Saying that there are no norms, there are no standards, is itself a standard. A terrifyingly, radically new one. IVG isn't abolishing standards so that we can all frolic in a sexual utopia. It is instead replacing old standards with new ones. This not only means that you will be punished for adhering to the old standards, but it also means that the state will have absolute total control over these standards and will be able to change, modify, and alter them however it wants, whenever it wants, for whatever reason that it wants. We will be as powerless as a weather vane and will point in whatever direction the wind of the state tells us to. Because you see, all of our other foundations will have been pulled out from under us. Personal relationships, family, local community, it'll all be gone. All that will be left is the state. G.K. Chesterton once said that we cannot ignore the reality of father, mother, child. We'll either acknowledge that reality or we will be destroyed when we try to ignore it. Spar has made her choice. The question before us now is, do we follow her over the cliff? Or do we actually resist? But as always, what say you? What are some ways how we can resist Spar's brave new world from actually coming into existence and stripping us of our very humanity? As always, let me know your thoughts, ideas, and opinions in the comment box below. Well, that about wraps up everything for right now, gang. Before you go, if you could give the video a like and share it with your friends on social media, I'd be very much obliged. And if you like videos about the culture, politics, and religion from a unique POV, then subscribe to the channel, tickle the bell for notifications, so that you will always know when I post new videos like this every week that you're not going to want to miss. As always, thank you for watching, for giving me a little bit of your day. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed to my channel. I appreciate you all. And until next time, gang, stay safe, stay free by daring to read, think, speak, and write. I will talk to you later. Ciao.